Hello, Hoops Heads, and welcome to the weekly Hoopla, where I break down the need-to-know news in a busy world of the NBA. Before I start, as always, thank you for watching, and of course, please hit that thumbs up button. Now that the corporate stuff is out of the way, let's get into the show. Injuries. We hate them. They happen. How do we deal with them? What happens? Well, if you're the Phoenix Suns, you're probably thinking all of these things and even more because Bradley, the real deal Beal, injured again, not even a quarter into the Big Three's debut with the Phoenix Suns. Unfortunately, coming down on the foot of whoever the hell the defender was, didn't write that down. Brad Beal twisted his ankle up pretty good, and he will be out for a few weeks. So, yeah, we'll get into the Suns and stuff once we get into the last part of our show today. But I did want you guys to go ahead and know that the Big Three era is still in limbo. So I feel bad for the Suns fans a little bit because I know that, you build the super team and you're like, boom. But here's why we've all started to turn a little bit on super teams is because it's just this much margin of error at all times. Moving on to a team that did try to build this a little bit more naturally, but unfortunately might have to face a different reality. The Cleveland Cavaliers. They are going to be without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley for the foreseeable future. Darius Garland collided with Kristaps Porzingis' chest, fractured his jaw. They labeled this as out for several weeks. So who the hell knows? I'm not a doctor. All I know is it's probably not that bad. I think he got back into the game, if I can remember. But ultimately, I'm sure X-rays showed the fracture. They're like, let's deal with this now. And this comes with the same news that Evan Mobley is going to miss at least 6 to 8 weeks. But the surgery is tomorrow, today, if you're watching this, tomorrow for me, today for you. And that's why that 6 to 8 weeks is a little interesting because that probably could easily put us past the trade deadline or around the deadline. And, Mobley's missed last 4 games with knee soreness, so it's not like this was out of nowhere. But this certainly puts the Cavs in an unfortunate spot, essentially with the Donovan Mitchell future at question. I think this will be an interesting stretch run. They're not the least talented team. It's not like it falls off completely without these two guys. In fact, the Cavs might have found one of the bigger sleepers in the draft at guard, and so we'll get to see him play a little bit more, Craig Porter Jr. And we'll get to see him more and maybe see if he's got enough juice to be a lasting player in the NBA. The front court, I guess, makes it a little bit easier to figure out Jared Allen's job, but, ultimately Evan Mobley's inconsistencies don't outweigh his positives enough in my mind. And certainly if you're trying to compete for playoffs and titles. So that sucks. I mean, this feels like it does set the team back. Of course, they could always survive this, get healthy, and then make a nice playoff run, and this is all sort of mute. But I don't even need to believe it. It's already happening. The NBA world is already going crazy over the possibilities of these guys leaving or Mitchell leaving, and he's immediately going to jump through to the top of the charts of available players. So it's understandable why. However, I do just, I caution all the people ready to completely punt on the Cavaliers as saying this isn't the worst group ever. This is going to allow some guys to get minutes they needed and maybe allows the Cavs to do some stuff at the deadline that helps when Mobley and Garland are back. So it's not great news for Cleveland, but I'm not ready to say doom and gloom, and I'm definitely not quite ready to give the Mitchell trade rumors any more validity than they deserve at this point. Some unfortunate news. A couple of guys going down with some pretty severe injuries, big guys, both Texas-adjacent players. Charles Bassey has been a nice little find for the San Antonio Spurs, was hopefully going to develop into a little bit of the muscle that you might feel like you need with Wemby down at the paint. Really enjoyed Bassey. He's a high-caliber prospect. He didn't really have as successful a college career. It was a little bit longer, and that got used against him. But since getting into San Antonio, he's really shown some signs of use. And whenever they changed the lineup in San Antonio, I was hoping that Bassey would benefit from it. Unfortunately, while he was with the G League, Austin Spurs, I think there's Austin Spurs. I always want to call them the Toros. They haven't been the Toros in like a decade. So yeah, he tore his ACL, out for the season. Don't love that, especially when it's a player that's so close to the fringe. I do love that it's San Antonio. I feel like they're smart about handling this situation, and I feel like they also are aware that Bassie is a nice little piece and that he could help when healthy. Be a rotation kind of big, somebody you can keep in your lineup when you need a little bit of muscle and size in the paint. On the other side of things, somebody who has much more significance to their team this year, Mitchell Robinson. He suffered a stress fracture in his ankle a couple Fridays ago against the Celtics. Now we know that means he's going to have surgery and will be out for 8 to 10 weeks. We always do quotations because you should never truly believe the 8 to 10, the 6 to 10, or 6 to 8, the whatever, the 2 to 4. None of that stuff it holds validity. If it's 2 weeks or under, then maybe. But anything other than that, you're talking about a positive PR spin when they say 8 to 10. They're trying to do damage control. They're trying to make people think that it'll be there as soon as possible. And the reality is ramp ups, that's usually just this is when the ramp up is going to start, is 8 to 10 weeks. That's really important for the Knicks because they're in a big position. We'll talk about where they stand in the tiers of the upper echelon of the NBA. And currently, we're 17 days into December, and they have the worst defensive rating. That's worse than the Pistons. That's worse than the Spurs. That's worse than the Wizards. Tommy Beer, Knicks coverage. Shout out to digging that up. Always cite our sources here. That's a tough one for us, guys. Not gonna lie. That Mitchell Robinson is a guy who would look like on a stat page that he doesn't do enough for the average fan. If you're a fantasy player, maybe Mitchell Robinson isn't your favorite guy. Maybe he's useful with offensive rebounds, but I don't play fantasy, sorry. But ultimately, you wouldn't consistently expect him to be the stat pattern. You don't necessarily need him to lead in anything other than the rebounds department. Maybe blocks too. But ultimately, he, I think, has been one of the more significant parts of their group through this little run. And anytime he's missed time, I think it's reflected. Isaiah Hartenstein, I don't think that gives you a lot of hope. I don't think Jericho Sims has shown you anything yet that gives you inspiration. Of course, it's a great opportunity for those guys, but ultimately, at this point, there's nothing certain there. And when the Knicks are going to be facing the kind of season they're facing, it's not good. It's very frustrating to have one of your core pieces go out like this because not only are you trying to figure out what the next step is in this franchise, you're also trying to make it all your assets are in place in case you have to make a big move. You want to have if something happens, you want to have Mitchell Robinson healthy so that he's there to help everything. So this could get them to the deadline. He comes back, they make the big move. Knicks are on the run, but either way, it could end up being that they're on the run to trying to sneak into the playoffs because in this interim period, they become a track meet team. They become a team that can win if the other team can't score more, but otherwise won't work. And that's crazy to think about a Thibs team, but it does feel like that's the likelihood of the situation. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope entered a concussion protocol against the Bulls. First half of that game did not return. He has not returned since. That's not necessarily something that is expecting to keep people out very long. This isn't the NFL where concussions are at a premium, but they are taken super seriously, especially when you're a guy like KCP. You're doing a lot of thinking. You've got to have that shot going, man. You got to have your head clear. Concussion is no joke. And I know that there's been a historical feeling about that where, head trauma isn't as severe, but it's a very, very important thing. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a very, very important player. Even if the Nuggets got rid of him tomorrow, he'd be a very, very important player for whoever picked him up. And so we definitely want to monitor that moving forward. Like I said, I don't expect them to miss much time, probably be back before the next time we talk. Someone I probably wouldn't bet would be back by the next time we talk is Kyrie Irving. Not saying he couldn't. He's currently missed the last 4. He's still day-to-day officially, but from my opinion, I don't think that they'll force him in. I think that's there's probably been reason enough, especially with Exum, to think that they're buying themselves the time. We'll talk about another Mavs-related injury in a bit that is a little bit more on the priority level, I feel like. Obviously, you need Kyrie to do anything big this year. Not trying to downplay that. But I do think at this point in the season, Kyrie taking his sweet time to nurse this injury back to as full health as he can get it is probably the easy bet. And so similar to Maxi Kleber, who hasn't played in a bit, despite an injury that may not deserve as much time as he's been out, this is about a bigger picture. And for Kleber and Kyrie, it may be two different versions of that bigger picture, but it's still about the bigger picture. So that's also good for Jaden Hardy. He needs to develop either to be a better asset or to be a better Maverick. Moving into the people that I kind of have highlighted here, more or less, not because the injuries are severe at all, actually, because the trades are official now. We're past the December 15th deadline. We need to pass the January 15th deadline to really have the full menu of options available in the NBA. But I do believe that we'll see something before the January 15th deadline comes up. So Jordan Clarkson, that means you're probably the easiest name to think is leaving Utah, because I think Utah might want to move some other guys first. We'll talk about in a bit. But ultimately, I do think that Jordan Clarkson is the most attractive piece outside of the obvious Lauri Markkanen piece. I think that Jordan is the most attainable piece for a good team, and therefore makes his market quite nice. Of course, you got to have a need. Jordan Clarkson is essentially added firepower to your bench. And so how he'll actually be coveted from those competitive teams depends on their own needs. So we'll get into that closer to it. A bicep strain has kept him out for the last 3 games. Will probably continue to do so for at least this week, if not the next. Like I said, that's important because, yes, the Jazz are trying to sort of cobble into whatever team they're going to be this year. But more or less, this is important because Jordan Clarkson is a very attractive piece to a team, maybe like Philadelphia, maybe like Miami. So I do expect him to be moved at some point, and his health has everything to do with that. Another trade-related injury before we get into the next part of this, and this whole category I sort of lumped together as all the major injuries, the long-going injuries we're dealing with right now. Not reiterating anybody who's already been lost that we've talked about, but anything that's currently worth monitoring in that realm. The last one is AJ Griffin. AJ Griffin has not had any real injury here. This is personal reasons, but cited missed last 3 games. And he was one of the more impactful rookies of his first season last year. And of course, now he's not playing. There's been a regime change in Atlanta. There's been many rumors. I expect AJ Griffin to be a part of any package that the Hawks would make to upgrade this season. And so maybe this is one of our first little breadcrumbs of signs that deals are starting to be talked about, that they're starting to come. Otherwise, you just don't understand. Like, personal reasons kind of feels like you're out of rotation. We're going to trade you. We all know that. We can't publicly say that. So let's cite personal reasons, take some time off, come back, get your value up if we can't make a deal. But, it's tough. You're out of the rotation in a city that has plenty of guards right now, and doesn't have a lot of the other stuff. So I do expect AJ Griffin to be moved if nobody ahead of him in the depth chart isn't. Our scares. This is going to be the next little bubble of players. None of this is too severe, so it should take no time to get through. Anthony Davis had a little hip and ankle issue that kept him out of the second game against the Spurs, but that's nice for the Spurs because they got to break a 17-game losing streak. Everything seems fine with AD, but it's AD, so we mention it. Anthony Edwards also had a hip pointer issue, didn't miss much time at all. Doesn't look like an issue that could go on further. Keontae George, one of the more fun rookies and one of DFW's finest sons, has come out and had a little bit of an injury, but after a really nice run as the starter for the Jazz. It was a non-contact injury, so there's a lot of fear going into this one. He missed the last week for their road trip, but they do expect him to get a little bit of run soon and probably be back within a week or two. This has also been good for the Jazz low-key because Colin Sexton has been great in the starting lineup again. And I'm thinking that's probably pretty good for if they're trying to make some moves, because I'm pretty sure they're into the Keontae George market more than they're into the Colin Sexton market long term, though things can always change. Alex Caruso, another big name that could be either traded or help the Bulls season move forward. He had an issue with his left ankle in the first game against the Heat and sent out the second one. Again, this is very important because the Bulls absolutely need everything they can get right now to piece this together if they are going to survive the Zach LaVine drama. And if not, they need him to be healthy so they can cash in on this if it explodes. Paul George has a hip injury as well. These things happen, as you can tell. This happened during a blowout win over the Kings. He sat out last night against the Knicks. They didn't need him. They won. He'll be day-to-day moving forward, so that's a great sign. And probably the best news for Clippers fans going into this, this is the first time that either Paul George or Kawhi Leonard has missed any time. That means a lot for the Clippers. And it started to show in the win column. Josh Okogie, adding to the Suns' litany of injury issues. He's their kind of super glue guy that's really, really, really necessary when you have the issues you have with three superstars, potentially ball dominant players. You need that glue guy. Okogie could be a perfect glue guy for them. He has a hip injury as well, and he will be day-to-day moving forward. Of course, margin for error gets very, very small, especially without Beal. How much can Booker and KD keep this team afloat? How much time do you actually need? I think once we get into the standings talk later, you'll see it's not as dire as it seems maybe, but you do still have to start worrying a little bit for the Suns. We're already 20-something games into the season, Derek Lively, as we talked about with the Mavs stuff. Last night, there was an ankle sprain. There's no timetable yet. It's important to note the Mavs have done pretty damn well despite some of their injury woes this last month. That being said, they have won this many games without Derek Lively. Now, that's kind of small sample size, fudgy, but I think it does reiterate the point that you don't want to be running that much Rashawn Holmes. I know I don't have to tell Mavs fans that they don't want the Dwight Powell minutes out there. With all love to Dwight Powell, I don't want to pull it out, I'll destroy it. But there's some Dwight Powell bobblehead propaganda back here. We're pro Dwight Powell. He's good for our city, so we got to show him love. But not necessarily for the Mavericks to win basketball games right now. So again, we really want to see what the duration of this is going to be. The Mavs can probably skate by for a little bit, but you certainly don't want to miss any major time. The standings are very congested, and I think the Mavs are enjoying where they're at and would like to continue to be there. Finally, our last bit in the injury department, and there was a lot this week. Sorry about the 20 minutes and still doing injuries talk, but that's just the nature of the beast. DeAndre Ayton and Malcolm Brogdon have returned to action. DeAndre Ayton there's a lot to get into with DeAndre Ayton. He's healthy. He's healthy and he's playing. Brogdon, it's interesting and it's important because obviously, should someone want to make a trade, he's a nice player. Although I think the issue with Brogdon this year is you've seen all these nice games and you've seen all these negative box scores. And now you have to decide whether he's just playing his best game on a crappy team or if he really is a part of the crappiness too in some form or fashion. And it's a mean thing to say, but unfortunately, the way those numbers, when it's that consistent, when he's that consistently negative, despite really solid offensive performances, I think that's where you start to worry a little bit if you're a GM and you're like, I'm bringing this guy. How much do I have to get to bring this guy on? I think it matters a lot for Brogdon. It's kind of why the Celtics moved on from him. Jaden McDaniels is back with the best team in basketball, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Lost the first game back, but then 2 big wins against the Mavs and the Pacers to follow that up. So everyone is very happy to have him healthy and making that defense even more stout. Lauri Markkanen, who we'll definitely talk more about in this episode, had a solid 18-point game in his first game back. Of course, Sacramento killed him. But remember what I said about Brogdon having such a horrendous negative box score? Jazz got killed last night. Lauri just a -2. I know, again, that may not mean the world, but that is like a little sign that like, hey, this guy's efficient. This guy's doing his part at least, right? It's just a little sign. It's just a little more comforting. It's not concrete. It's just a little sign. It's just a little bit more that makes me feel comfortable. DeAndre Hunter, he also is back. Also had a 19-point performance out of it. DeAndre Hunter, I think, is probably also, along with AJ Griffin, a part of a package for whatever Atlanta tries to upgrade with, which we will talk about in a little bit. But I do feel like that's an important one to have back in the lineup. Obviously, if a team is going to have Hunter be a part of the package, it's not just going to be for the salary filler. It's going to be because they kind of have a desire to keep that man around. He's their asset now, so it's important for him to get moving. I think it's fair to say that Atlanta feels a little stuck, but ultimately you got to get him out there healthy so that you can initiate these conversations and then move on in a trade that does put the Atlanta Hawks in the position they want to be in the trade. And then finally, to wrap up our injuries, Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo should be back this week. Tyler's been out for quite a bit. No craziness here. I think that's probably about when I projected him to be back, is mid-December. So that looks like it's a little behind, but basically on par there. Bam Adebayo coming back, not surprising, but still a storyline that we're going to follow. And we're going to follow mostly because obviously Bam's very important. We know Bam is very important to what Miami's trying to do. We know that Miami doesn't necessarily care about playing their deep bench. We know they don't necessarily care about being the number one seed. So the reason I bring this up is there is an extra reason. There's also a maximum contract at stake for Bam Adebayo and many, many reasons to play. Therefore, him coming back perhaps prematurely, perhaps not. I'm not in the medical room. I don't know. But that is a part of the storyline. It's something we have to make sure of. We'll have to see how this hit goes. If this is him trying to force it till he gets the max deal, then it could get ugly and this could be a bad situation. But maybe he's already taken the time off that he needs, or maybe they'll continue to figure out ways to load manage him without tanking his all-NBA, all-defensive player of the year candidacies. And that's injury news, guys. Only about 23 minutes of that. Oh, well. Now we get into the fun part. The news, the rumors, the stuff that makes this league, so much of this league. It was a busy week. So busy that it's a little annoying that I still feel like I need to do an IST to wrap up, but we'll do it quickly. All IST team, Tyrese Halliburton, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, we will talk about those two in a second. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. No surprise on those five. Ratings, there was a difference in opinion. There was an audience peak that was the highest since any non-Christmas game in over 5 years, according to ESPN. However, there are some interesting parts of the NBA media that like to get clicks, which is fair. That's a part of your job. That's how your bread gets buttered. I get it. However, sometimes we use little stupid things, make these clickbait articles. There was one particular guy. He's very, very well known for this. You've probably heard of his name. He was pretty big back in the day. I think now the internet started to market correct him a little bit, unfortunately. He tried to use Nielsen ratings to say the opposite of this, essentially. So believe what you want to believe. I think the true definition of success in the modern sports world is how many people were gambling on it. And that, my friend, 3 times the action. 3 times the action can be a sports betting tracking firm. That's what they say. They say, count them up. 1, 2, and 3. 3 times as many people gambling on the IST games. So put that in your pipe. Smoke it. Lakers are going to raise a banner. I'm not one of those people who's just going to continue to pile on the Lakers. I'm not mad that they won or anything like that. However, I have to admit that it's hilarious that they are. I have to wonder if Adam Silver made the call. They're going to do it. They're going to basically put up one banner. It's going to look very different, apparently, and it's going to leave space for any future IST championships. So that's nice. We have a president set for everybody else that wins it in the future. That's nice. And I do like that. I actually really do like that. Just no Lakers involved, no NBA law involved. I really don't hate that. I don't hate that at all for whichever team did it. Of course, it's just funny that the Lakers did it. And of course, this feeds into of course they wanted the Lakers to win because it's LeBron, it's the Lakers, and they can they can set a standard with this. And you know what? Conspiracy theories, you're kind of there, but I mean, I think it's as simple as it was an easy draw. The Lakers handled business. They get that good call in Phoenix, and they just run it from there. It's not that crazy. And I think again, it's a good thing that it was a Lakers or a Celtics or somebody with lots of titles because it means that if it was Charlotte that won it and they're going to try to be proud, that's annoying. Charlotte, hang that banner, So good thing to set there. And then the changes. Lots of changes already being talked about, and it looks like we will most likely have that to break down next year once the competition committee gets together and decides on what they can tweak about this. We're also probably going to find out at the end of the year that a new sponsor has taken over and helped boost the TV deal with it, which is a very important part of the league that we will need to get to, not at this time, but in the off season for sure. Oh boy. All right. That's the ist. Now for the drama. This league, hashtag this league, as some famous podcasts might call it. Draymond Green is probably the best way to start. He smacked the crap out of Yusuf Nurkic, adding to his incredibly hilarious, long track record of almost blatantly intentional offenses towards his competition, regardless of any sort of human decency or any of that. Yeah, it was tough. And everything from there has been tough. He's suspended indefinitely. When it first happened, Woj was like, "Oh, it's going to be a long time." An anonymous source said it was the season. Now we get indefinitely as the official word. This means a couple things. So Joe Dumars, who former Piston legend, Hall of Famer, now part of the disciplinary part of the NBA executive offices, he said, this means, in quote, get yourself right. The wording in the press release statement, he will be required to meet certain league and team conditions before he returns. That's, again, pretty textbook. I think that's pretty much exactly what John Morant's suspension said the first time, or one of the first times. So, yeah, that's an interesting part of this where, they just did this. We just had this problem with the Rudy Gobert choking incident. Draymond, obviously, last year with Jordan Poole, all the nut kicks, all of the stomping on Sabonis' chest, the stuff that I'm not going to lie, makes hilarious videos on the internet. But yeah, I think if I'm the NBA, I'm probably starting to get to the point where this needs to get the hell out of the league a little bit. And this can't set speaking of setting precedents, this can't set the precedent for this. And, that's an interesting thing moving forward. This really, really, really puts the Golden State Warriors in an interesting place, which we will talk about in a bit. But Mike Dunleavy, the GM, he backed Draymond Green. Players backed him. I think a lot of the jokes were that people were talking about Draymond like he was a drug addict, which is kind of funny because it did really sound like that. And maybe there is more going on in Draymond's world that this is we've been having this problem for 15 years. This has been who he is. I mean, and if you haven't seen it, I mean, please go find it. But it's probably the most egregious. Probably the funniest, the most egregious. He's the most creative jackass in the history of the NBA. And I mean that as a term of endearment. Because it's truly amazing how much he tries to bend the gray area of basketball. He knows no bounds. This was just another step towards that. And I want to finish by saying shout out to Yusuf Nurkic for handling this in a professional and respectable manner. I think a lot of times we end up getting worse about this, and people end up getting a little bit lamer, and it starts making it weirder. And so I was happy that he took the high road on this and just left it at that. Because honestly, this could have got ugly. He smacked him he smacked the shit out. I'm not gonna lie. Yusuf Nurkic had the right to start swinging back. Thankfully, that didn't happen. Nikola tossed for cussing at the refs. This is Nikola. Nikola's been getting quite teed up. Mr. Jokic himself. Um, a lot to go on here. I think the funniest part at this point was after the game. He made some interesting comments. Would probably say, let's use those words a little bit better, big guy. Know the English isn't the first language. Giving you a little grace there, but I gotta say that maybe saying that the officials wouldn't get away with that in your country isn't the best way to go. But you said it, and now we'll always have that. And it's at the same time, as far as I'm in the content game here, and I don't hate it. It was hilarious. He made it sound like he was gonna that his brothers would have gone ahead and taken him out. At the same time, I have to advocate against people taking sports that seriously. It's a double-edged sword. We're talking about gray areas with Draymond. That's my gray area as a fan, is enjoying that kind of shit while also not wanting to encourage actual physical violence, because some people can't actually differentiate these things. Michael Malone made sure to tell everybody that he did call the league and said that he wasn't happy with how Nicola's being officiated. There was not an official response, but here it is. There's my prediction. Okay. All right, and then the next part of the drama of the week, as if that wasn't enough, as if that was all I needed to cover this week, Giannis set the single game points record for the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, we don't usually go over that kind of stuff. There's so many things. Like every week, guys moving up and down the all-time ranks and stuff. And this is great for Giannis. But you guys know that's not why I'm bringing this up. So as the game ends, a Pacers official or whoever, or security or whoever, is very clearly seen grabbing the basketball and taking it. This was for Oscar Tshiebwe. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I know you played a lot of college basketball, but that's my kind of weakness. Sorry. He got his first NBA points shooting a free throw. Also, funny side note, he got his first actual points in the IST, but since the IST doesn't count, this is actually the first actual points. So yeah, this whole thing could have been avoided just by not doing some weird stuff with that IST title game. But the NBA's had enough wins with this. Let's leave them alone for now. Giannis was not happy at all. He charged back into the court. He charged back in the locker room. It was quite a scene. It was close to, was it last year with the ladder issue? I think it was around the same level of Giannis. Like, chill out, brother. Like, it's, there's bigger fish to fry in the world here, and you're getting this worked up over a damn basketball. And it's like, you've made a lot of accomplishments. I get it. It's all-time Bucks record. You're probably the all-time Bucks best player. I get it. It's just one of those things where, speaking of, Giannis also said that he did not get the ball. He doesn't feel like he got the ball at all. The ball that they gave him, he says, isn't right. There's actually a tracking number where they can figure this out. I don't know if anyone's gone through and actually done that yet. But yeah, there's your drama. There's your second little bit of drama. Pretty Ricky, which is my nickname for Rick Carlisle. Sorry, Mavs fans are more familiar with that. You'll get used to it. But if I ever say Pretty Ricky, I'm not talking about, the old school Pretty Ricky. I'm talking about Rick Carlisle. You know what I mean? Style and profile and Rick Carlisle. He was pretty upset because he said that a Bucks player elbowed and bruised the ribs of the Pacers general manager. And then, though Pretty Ricky says this happened prior, the Pacers signed James Johnson the next day. In social media, I should also mention the social media teams had a great time with this, back and forth. And I think after the game, the Pacers posted like an Oscar Tshiebwe get to know him video, and then the Bucks just posted with Giannis holding the basketball, or a basketball. So a little fun there. That's what this league is about. Yeah, I love the X's and O's. I want to break down real shit. But, at the same time, this is what gets people going, man. This is what gets clicks. Like, this is, if anybody randomly is finding me today, it's probably because of this. It's probably because we hashtag put this in this fucking story, probably link this, this is what the NBA has the fandom for. This is, even if you don't like it, you got to accept it. Speaking of the person who's probably one of the most responsible reasons that we have these issues, Stephen A. Smith and his never-ending quest to dominate sports talk has a lot of time to fill. has his first take, of course. He has his own podcast. There's a lot of Stephen A content in the world, and God help you if you got this much. In fact, we've covered Stephen A like 3 or 4 times already on the Hoopla. That's not consequential. That's just how much this dude pops up into everything. Anyway, he said to start these comments, they're all about a week old, so most of you guys have probably heard a lot of this. This was initially going to be my lead story until these last 2 came out. Zion, he looks fat. I saw a belly. Then he compared him to Fat Bastard from the Austin Powers movies. That's pretty wild. I'm not going to lie. I'm not that easily offended. I probably say stupid stuff a lot, not intentionally being an asshole, but that I don't necessarily think very thoroughly through. Stephen A, that's pretty wild, man. And it's pretty wild because he's going to keep doubling down. You know, like, yeah, Zion should take it carefully. Zion should care more about all this stuff. But to start fat shaming, like, we're going into a wild place, man. We're going to a really wild place that we probably shouldn't go into. Like, you can just say conditioning. You don't have to call him Fat Bastard. You know what I mean? That's too far. I saw a belly. Okay, he looks fat. You can say that better. Fat Bastard, that's unexcusable, bro. You can't like, that's like, Zion is being very nice the way he's responding to this too, because that would have probably pissed me off if I was Zion. The chefs in New Orleans doubles down the next day on First Take. He says chefs in New Orleans love him, that he'll eat the table. He said he'll eat the table. Now, if he's quoting people, then I guess that's just, it is what it is. But it's also like, you're calling local business, like, you're stalking this dude out like that. Like, guys, I have a journalism degree. I'm not saying I'm the greatest journalist of all time. I'm not saying that I'd be better than Stephen A necessarily, but I do have to wonder, Stephen A, like, you're kind of paparazzi-ish now, right? No? Is that your wheelhouse, is to be picking on poor little Zion in New Orleans and then calling up chefs? And like, I know you want to be the most scooped guy or whatever, but this is kind of insane, man. Like, you're the biggest guy in sports talk, and the whole ESPN's a cooked product, man. Zion was made aware of these comments in a media scrub on last Monday night. He says, if it comes from a good place, thank you. If it's not, it is what it is. And then he said something that I think really hit close to home to me, and maybe helps me figure out where we're at here and why we have a problem, and maybe what New Orleans needs to actually handle. Been this way since I was 16 years old. Boom. That tells me a lot. It really does tell me a lot. And I sometimes think that I get a little bit of shit because I'm too compassionate for these guys. And I get it. They're millionaires. Their life's set. I'm not saying they're all awesome dudes that I co-sign. I'm just saying I can empathize with the journey. I can understand the pressure, because we've had so much of this recorded pressure. You know, we've seen it destroy people. We've seen it build up people. So when Zion talks about that 16-year-old thing, it matters a lot. I mean, you look at it with Amoni Bates and the stuff that he went through, and now maybe this Cleveland injury stuff is finally going to be his first chance, you know, but you have to be patient. You have to do the work. You have to be there. And unfortunately, we all live in a 2K-ass society where we think that Zion should be winning titles already or competing for titles already. And his maturity has to get there. He has to sort of grieve a childhood he never had, you know, and sometimes maybe that is spending too much money on stupid stuff. Maybe that is him being into some, you know, extracurricular stuff that I'm not going to continue to perpetrate, but it's all over the internet, you know? So it's one of those things where I empathize a lot when he said that. I think that matters. I think Zion has to defeat this little demon of his, this expectation that only a few basketball players really can relate to. And you know, hopefully that guy right there, that's the one you want to talk to, right? But it's not exactly perfect and easy just to replicate the LeBron standard. So you hope that he gets a little bit of help there, just to sort of deal with the pressure of what he's going to have to continue to go through. Even when he's successful, it just gets just as worse. You know, they don't let up on you because you win. That's such a bad notion. And people think that all the time. Say, no, dude. Then you just start getting compared to people who stop playing, and then it's just they move the sticks to make the content, you know? Then finally, on Tuesday, Zion's stepdad called Stephen A. And I was expecting a bit of apology, walk it back. No, he doubled down. He was like, no, That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm here to make Zion better. Okay. If you think so, if you think this is the path, if you think berating him on national television and helping feed all of these stupid little sports fans who don't put any of their own thought into it, that just mimic everything you say, that's the way you think this is the best to move forward in the television. Okay, Stephen A. Moving out of the drama and into the legal drama. Because, yes, this is still a business. And man, do we still have plenty of legal stuff to talk about, unfortunately. Now, not all of this is actually that bad, and it's definitely not as bad as some of the stuff we talked about this year. But we will get started with John Morant. A civil case related to the pickup game fight is taking place right now. He's also slated to begin his first game back Tuesday on TNT against the Pellies. So a couple of reasons we're talking Ja right now. Lots of back and forth going on in the lawsuit. Reading them between the lines, my unprofessional opinion, it sounds like a heated game of basketball went too far on both parts, and now we're in a stupid legal battle because one of these guys is a millionaire. Likewise, probably the highlight of this, although there was some chest passing, there was some other interesting things. The judge was like, "Hope you're ready to get back." Some weird stuff there. But probably the highlight of this was when the lawyer, for whatever reason, asked him if his diamonds were real in his necklace. That's got to make you feel like shit because you're a lawyer, you're a smart person, you know a lot of work to be here. You prepared for this case. This is a big case. Ask that question. Either you had to, or you just goofed the goofiest goof in the world. Because all he said, "Well, I am a millionaire," and that's all John needed to say. Because, like, duh, the fuck? I mean, Anthony Edwards did just say he has fake jewelry because everyone thinks it's going to look real anyway because he's a millionaire. But either way, like, most of these guys got real shit. Come on. That was also, and there was also a part where the defense asked him to punch him to demonstrate how it happened, for which Ja had to decline. Yeah, very weird legal proceeding going on there. That all got us to Friday's press conference, in which Ja basically got to have a formal talk with everyone, and basically came down to he's protecting his peace, which unfortunate wording. Even funnier to me that someone asked him to clarify that a few questions later. Of course, he's talking about his inner peace. That makes sense. That's logical. But the internet jokes, I'm sure, taking peace and spelling it the other way, you can see where they're going there. I'm sorry, I'm a journalist, but I also have a humor. I have to laugh at these things. I'm not against Ja. I'm not trying to keep beating on Ja. It's just funny that he said that. Asked about his response to the people changing. He says that people that don't believe he's changed, he says he can't do anything about it. He's got actions mean more. That's true. Love that. Asked if anybody was mentoring him. He said no, just the Grizzlies people. Pressed about how he's learned and what he's learned from. He said therapy. Good. That's the right answer. Whether it's true or not, again, actions. But the absolute highlight was at the end when, I don't know, some Stan account, some fanboy, some local media got on and asked him a question about if he's heard the outside noise about other people being better than him already. But the best part of that question was when he, before letting Ja answer it, goes, "I know you're still him. Like, it hurt me. I know. But what do you think about the people that don't?" And it was funny too. There was some Memphis accent stuff that I'm not going to do out of probably professional reasons more than actual ability to do that, because I do love that accent. But we're not going to do that for the recorded show here. That's not cool. But it was funny the way he said that. The follow up, Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson stuff. So go find that video just at the very end. If you go to the press conference on the Grizzlies YouTube channel, it's at the very end. Other legal stuff. Following up on the Raptors-Knicks lawsuit battle, The Raptors are Raptors are accusing Knicks of dragging it out because it attracts publicity and it harms the Raptors, their head coaches, and their staff. That is a paraphrase of the quote. They also noted that their staff could end up at the end of this suing the Knicks for defamatory legal reasons. So nice. And ultimately, if you want to know where we're at with this, it's as simple as saying the U.S. District Court is dealing with it because the Knicks issues with Adam Silver. The Raptors want Adam Silver to handle it because it's technically his job. So here we are. Boom. You have a little bit of a standstill. Does the District Court decide to handle it? Do they decide to just say, hey, Adam, take care of your children. We're not dealing with this. Time will tell. Moving into another fun part of this. Teams moving. We don't like that, but this one will be fine. The Wizards are moving to Virginia. No, they won't be the Virginia Wizards. And no, that's not just because it's problematic. It's because it's literally just going across the river and down a little bit. So it's all the DMV area. There's no reason to change all the branding and everything. All for you and I, this will be the same. Potomac Yard is the area in Alexandria, Virginia. They're going to move it to. It's going to be Virginia Stadium Authority will own the complex and lease it to Monumental Sports, which owns the Wizards and the Capitals and the Lynx, or not the Lynx, the Mystics. This has local political ties, means that Ted Leon's the owner. He'll likely take the company public in the future. Downtown DC is expected to fight this. And there's not a whole lot else to go there. It also could be the most expensive, based on local funding. This could take about $1.3 billion from state and local funding. Not necessarily if you're a basketball fan only, but if you're a sports fan only. One of the big things we're looking at moving forward is how much cities are going to be willing to subsidize these major super stadiums, and what will the teams do to incentivize that? Like in some cases, they really want to put these multi-use areas so that it's not just being used for basketball, for hockey or whatever. So it's 24/7 use on that. So that is part of the deal here. Sorry about that. Oh, and there's a $200 million breakage cost. So Ted Leon's and $200 million to $1.3 billion, that we're talking chump change. And the team that won't be moving anytime soon, the Oklahoma City Thunder, have renewed their vows with the NBA, and they will be in the Oklahoma area for at least 30 more years. And a new arena should be built within the next 5 to 10. This was sort of a little bit of an issue. Again, like I just mentioned, this isn't the most beloved thing in the world. This isn't the most beloved idea in the world. A lot of taxpayers don't like the idea of paying for rich people's stadiums, and I get that. Unfortunately, there's just sort of a precedent has been set for 15 years or whatever, since Jerry built that monstrosity in Arlington, which I do love, Jerry. It's just unfortunately there's a lot of fallout that's coming from that. So we have to look at these. Anytime a stadium comes up, we'll have this with the Mavs soon. They'll have to they'll have to figure out their downtown stadium option. They'll have to figure out whether the Irving site is better. The city of Dallas, obviously, that becomes an issue because the cities, this is a big deal for their local government stuff. So it's always an issue, and it's not just a coincidence that the Sonics left and that we've almost lost the Kings and that we've all there's been a lot of teams that have had to go through this. That they're gonna have to go through this. There is one last legal issue going on with Dwight Howard. I'm not going to cover that here. He's not an active NBA player, so go search that if you want. Bust into the rumors section. Got a lot of them here. This is a busy ass week, guys. I'm sorry. PJ Tucker and the Clippers are going to have a mutual breakup, probably, very likely in a trade scenario because he's owed $100 million or $11 million this year and $11.5 million next year as a player option, which I'm going to tell you right now, he's picking up. They're not using him for small ball roles anymore. They have Terrence Mann to do that. They've got 3 big guys that, once they're healthy, that can play that role. I expect him to be coveted by contender, but I'm not really sure that he's going to be the most important guy on the market. I think, if anything, he might even be as late as the deadline to get moved once people have sort of all the pieces have fallen where they may. Sham says the Raptors are likely to move on from Siakam and OG. We've been knowing this for a while. I don't believe this report until I see it. We know Atlanta, Sacramento, and Indiana are probably the most interesting candidates at this point. Oklahoma City, there's some other people that can get in. I think for Sacramento, it's really tough because Keegan Murray, man, he just last night 12 of 13 from 3. He's a defensive, hard defensive worker, and the package would probably be 3 picks. Jake Fisher said it would be 3 picks, Murray, and a depth player, which is probably Davion Mitchell. That's a lot to give up for guys like OG, especially OG's the only one that fits in Sacramento, in my opinion, because Pascal and Sabonis together don't necessarily feel like that mattered. That doesn't feel like a fix. There is a robust market, apparently, according to Michael Grange of Sportsnet in Toronto. And I don't doubt that. I think Atlanta's probably a really good spot to look at that trade deal. But we'll obviously have to see. And then the weirdest team mentioned, James Edwards of The Athletic, said Detroit could actually start being a player for guys like OG Anunoby and Tobias Harris, which we're going to have to get into the Detroit thing later. So Detroit being in that rumor kind of highlights why we're all a little confused about Detroit right now. What's available in Utah? We know that John Collins is probably going to be the option there. They brought him in on the trial run. Didn't expect that to be any other thing than trying to recoup value on a guy that they might have, I think they took a chance, try to get some more assets. It didn't exactly work. They'll get something probably, but that's what you use cap space in a bad roster for, And then, of course, now the rumor is Lauri Markkanen can be had. Of course, if he's on the market, he's probably one of the most high-priced guys, which makes me kind of feel like he's not going to be on the market. Maybe Oklahoma City does swing that trade. Maybe that's a big enough guy for Sacramento to make the move for. But it'll be interesting to see. And it's interesting that just that his name's being mentioned when he felt very untouchable going into last year, or to end last year. Mark Spears had a wild rumor about Keldon Johnson and the Spurs. Only thing I'm going to bring up here is Pop's reaction to the Spurs potential trades. Why would we do that? Why would we do that? Then he sarcastically made a joke about adding a couple of vets so they can win the title this year. Yeah, I agree. Keldon Johnson's a nice role player. I mean, if you get blown away, do it. But if you don't get blown away, why the hell would I trade Keldon Johnson? He's not that useful to everybody else. And then Clutch Mafia, man, they're still working their ass off. They're still trying to get Levine out of there, man. Rumors have it that they're just trying to force it to the Lakers, even if it's not till January 15th, and the Lakers can do everything, can do their full array of options. NBC Sports' Casey Johnson reports the Knicks, the Sixers, and the Heat have not shown any interest. Jake Fisher says that the Bulls offered Darius Garland for Zach LaVine. That's wild. No, I can help you with that one. And then essentially what we're looking at is Casey Johnson noted, should the Lakers end up being the team that balks at the price, because essentially it seems like it's only the Lakers in the market right now. Should they end up balking at the price and going a different route or not making the trade, it is expected that they'll still reach a long-term agreement with Zach LaVine in hopes, or that due to his contract, the professionalism has stayed there, because there is a possibility that he finishes this year and that they will have to make that trade in the offseason. But damn, if that's not the worst case scenario for the Bulls and their fans especially. All right, and then we're going to get into quick hitters before we get into our tiers and end this thing out. A little longer than usual, but the game is the game. A stand broke into Steph Curry's residence trying to get an autograph. Thankfully, a nanny stopped him. Don't know how anything else didn't stop him. Feels like if I'm in Steph Curry's neighborhood, I would have had to have answered to a few more people before that, but guess not. Nobody was hurt. That person's probably in a lot of trouble, but other than that, nothing too crazy from that story. Just wild that it happened. Daryl Morey gets an extension in the wake of the Harden fiasco. I'm like, that's not surprising, but at the same time, kind of surprising. He's done a good job. It's just, you don't blame it. You don't put any of that Harden stuff on him. Anyway, that's Philly's problem to have. I like Daryl Morey. It's not like if Philly got rid of him that another team wouldn't throw the whole thing at him Sunday, so I get it. Team USA will be doing their first showcases in London's O2 Arena against the South Sudan and Germany. Germany obviously won the FIBA World Cup, and then South Sudan has been Luol Deng's pet project for a little while now. They're one of the younger countries. We covered that in the preview to the FIBA World Cup this year on the show. So interesting to see having nice. It's a good competition. They get some American guys with ancestry, and Luol's done a good job there. So it'll be fun. Obviously, we hope there's a super team going up against those two clubs, and we hope this is the first time we get to see maybe the best ever Team USA. We will see. NBA is partnering with InVenue. It's a Dallas-based predictive analytics and micro betting platform that's interesting to move forward with, not just because we're Dallas people here locally, but we're very interested in see sports betting, Dallas sports betting. Obviously, it's illegal here in the state of Texas, but it's clearly, obviously, the future of the industry. So it'll be very interesting to see. Yeah, sorry, people on the phone. It's a Sunday, guys. We got the Cowboy game on soon. I'm trying to wrap up. Doug, I'm literally texting you while I'm talking to you in the past for the future, bro. Crazy. The Bucks were going to sign with Fubo TV for the rest of the season, or Fubo TV. Fubo? I'm going to screw this up. It's Fubo TV for me now. I'm sorry. This adds an interesting option to the streaming platform. We don't know what it's going to look like next year. We know that because of a little bit of news, actually, that I'll just jump onto right here. Diamond Sports will likely finish the season out, but will be gone after that. So ultimately, this is the teams starting to get another option out there, test the market, see who's a good partner, or whatever. The Bucks are going to start with Fubo. Again, sorry, you're Fubo to me. Adds an option, an extra option. So they'll still have their Diamond Sports package, I believe, but there is this new option for the fans in Milwaukee now. We do know Mark Cuban will retain 25% ownership of the Mavericks. Not much else to say on that, just that's the official number for the Mavs. Of course, there will be a lot more Mavs ownership-related content moving forward as we learn more about the plans for the future arena and all that other good stuff. Taj Gibson's back to being a Knick. Again, not that important to the news. It's a non-guaranteed deal, so he may not even finish the season, but he is a Knick. Of course, Mitchell Robinson's injury is a big part of that. Sportico's value list has come out as well. Sportico has the Warriors at number 1, the Knicks at number 2, the Lakers at number 3, the Celtics number 4. If you don't pay attention to this very often, that has pretty much been the standard for the last few years since the Warriors have ascended to who they are. The Bulls have in the first time in a very long time, started to trend down. And the Clippers, expectedly, with Ballmer, with the new arena, with the guys they've had, they're trending back up. So most likely, over the course of the next year or two, the Clippers will end up being that solid top 5 of the NBA worth. And the Bulls will go back to being normal because it's incredible that Michael Jordan still kept them this relevant. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We got a couple other notes here from ex-players. Sean Marion's number was retired, 31, in Phoenix. We love that. Of course, he had issues with the previous ownership, so it was really cool to see him go out there and get his due. And he, of course, topped up the new ownership, and we love the pettiness. It says, very somber, rest in peace to George McGinnis. The Hall of Famer, was an all-ABA team member. He is a 2-time ABA champion with the Pacers. He was sort of the first great Indiana Pacer, one of the first great Indiana Pacers. And then once he ended up being in the NBA after the merger, he had 2 All-Star appearances with the Sixers and 1 with the Nuggets. I think George McGinnis is probably an easier person to lose in the grand scheme of all of the great athletes we've had, but he's certainly not someone who should be excluded from the all-time, list of just incredible athletes in basketball history. I think that for me, I feel bad because there was a lot of current NBA history exists to sort of disparage the ABA or has by consequence. So there's a lot of negative George McGinnis stuff out there. And so that really hurts me. And of course, when I try to get this from the jump stuff started, that's why I want to do this, is to give everybody a full, fair perspective of the future. or we're not trying to protect the NBA's image for whatever reason. We're just trying to tell the history of pro basketball. But I digress. Of course, the most important person, one of the most important people to the history of pro basketball, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Fell and broke his hip this weekend. He is okay. He will undergo surgery, and we will try to keep you updated on Cap. Obviously, as guys get older, years are precious. Cap stays pretty relevant with a lot of things. Still comes to games fairly regularly. So very happy to hear that he's okay. And, of course, it is sad to hear that he had that issue. All right. Finishing in, and I didn't even change the ticker. Caught up. Right there, live on screen. You can see it. I still have the IST. I didn't change it. So we're changing it now on the spot while you're here with me, folks. Boom. It's Tears time. That wasn't what I wanted either, but fuck it. We're going to just run with it. All right. So I have split this up into a few tiers here, and these tiers will change over time. So let's get off with the easiest ones. The contenders on pace. Contenders on pace tier, very simple, right? We knew coming into this season, you're going to compete. You have everything. You are one of the best teams. However, do you live up to it? How does the injury affect you? How do you start with your first games? So far, these three teams have done a great job. Boston, Milwaukee, Denver, right? Boston's 19-5, they're first place in the East. Milwaukee's 18-7, they're second place in the East. Denver's 17-10, they're the fourth in the West. So that's not awesome. Maybe some wouldn't consider that on pace. When you consider the injuries, you consider where they're at. I'm not too worried about it. Everything's pretty much on pace. They just have to get there. It's the benefit of being the defending champion is that you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Contenders if the next category. These teams are not unanimous contenders. They're not outside of contention. They're certainly teams that you could give me a reasonable scenario in which they've remodeled their team or they've reconfigured something, gotten hot, and now they have won the NBA title. That's the way I look at it. Contenders if. For me, this is a pretty large group here. So for Philadelphia, we'll start off 18-7. They're the third seed in the East. For me, this is a big if on how do they use the James Harden split up contracts? How do they get this thing closer to contention where they have a lot of useful players right now, but they don't have a third tier star that they want maybe, or that they don't feel like they have enough supplemental role players, high level supplemental role players. That's kind of the big if there. And then I think there's a lot of people with Joel that just need to see it to believe it in the playoffs because there have been a lot of frustrating playoff performances at this point. Miami's 15-11. They're the Eastern Conference's 5 seed right now. That's without Bam and Tyler for a good bit of this last month. And then Jimmy had missed a bit of time to start the season. So they're pretty much on pace. Of course, Miami, we know the last couple of years, it doesn't matter where they end up. It just matters that they're healthy. So the contenders is just if they're still the Miami Heat, if they're just ready to do what they do every year. Mm-hmm. Dallas Mavericks, they're 16-9. They're the Western Conference's 3rd seed. I think I said 4th seed earlier. They're 3rd seed right now. That's going really well. The injury bug also has not affected them, as I've mentioned earlier, at least not a ton yet. However, we still don't quite feel like we're looking at a team that is contention for NBA title worthy, right? Now, part of that maybe is even though we love Derek Lively, we're worried about the youth. And then if we do love Derek Lively enough, we're terrified of the bench behind him. And then there's a lot of guys that you like, but you know that the inconsistency is really heavy with a lot of guys like Grant Williams, Tim Hardaway. Even if you trust in Kleba again, there's some stuff that you're a little worried with there. So while you hope Kyrie's healthy, you hope Luka's still playing at the elite level he's playing at this year, best he's ever played at, and that's saying something. You still feel like the Mavericks are going to have to work really hard to find a couple pieces here to win this year's title, if that's even possible. But I still think that Luka's greatness gives you this contenders if category. But I do think that while everything is on pace, it still feels like you really can't get this team to that level of contention until next season at the earliest. The Lakers are always sort of going to be in this bracket, at least while they have LeBron and AD. 15-11, Western Conference 8 seed. They've been slipping a little bit since the East, but I'm not too worried about that, obviously. They're probably in the similar boat as Miami, where they're not super concerned about what their regular season record is. They're concerned about health. But even if they do stay healthy, even if they keep this team as going, they're going to have to figure out what's going on with D'Angelo Russell. Do you keep him? Do you not? Because at this point, I'm starting to worry about the negative effects it has on him and the team. I get that he's your trade asset, but you still have to manage this guy as if he's your part of your team. He's not traded yet. Unless you have this conversation with him and he understands, it's a bad situation. And I think the Lakers need to be careful about how they handle this, or else they're going to, screw up another prime window to win with LeBron and AD, which they've been really good at over the last 5 years, impressively. Another good fucking team that's screwing up having superstars, the Los Angeles Clippers. They're 15-10. They're the 6th seed currently. Things are looking amazing for them. I told you guys earlier, the health is looking good. Harden's looking good. This team, maybe it's just time. Maybe we're already seeing the signs of this health and time. I said I wasn't going to bury the Clippers, and I meant it, and I'm glad I didn't, because this is turning into the direction that they wanted it to, especially going into next year's new arena. I don't know what this team is as far as winning playoff games, because it feels like it's still just hard to trust, even if they're healthy. But contenders, if they're kind of meeting that if more than a lot of these other teams are right now. Sacramento, 15-9. They've got they're the 5th seed at the moment. I think with Sacramento, you're looking at an interesting option. How do you upgrade? Do you move on from Keegan Murray to try to pursue a title? Is there a player that is worth that? I think that's the better question to ask yourself. Do you fortify your rim protection in this trade deadline? Those kind of things are big ifs to me. I think De'Aaron's playing great. Sabonis playing great. I just still look at this team as kind of stunted growth if they don't have a little bit more. For me, I don't know that it can just be internal development. I think they do have a couple of roster needs that they need to address in order to contend. Phoenix is 13-12. They're the Western Conference's 10th seed, so being contenders is really a stretch for these guys. But I think that we all know the star power. We feel fairly confident about the depth. So I'm not ready to put them into one of my other brackets yet. But this Bradley Beal injury is starting to make it feel like they maybe need to go down to a different tier that we'll mention in a bit. But for right now, Durant's still Durant, man. Booker still plays a really good game. They've got a lot of useful players. Where I don't think the depth is near as barren as a lot of teams, big threes in the past. So I do think that they'll be fine ultimately, even if they have to go through a grimier way of going to the play-in or whatever it is. So the contenders is if healthy, and if you can get this full roster together and play basketball, I think you might be cooking. And then finally, a team that maybe you could argue shouldn't be in this group, because the if is sort of not an if at this point, but I think for the if for me is, can I trust it continuously? The Minnesota Timberwolves, currently the best team in the basketball, 19-5. They're the 1st seed in the Western Conference right now. For me, it's been amazing. Rudy's helped turn the whole narrative around. They're one of the best defensive rosters that we've seen in a long time. They've got a creative defensive coach. They've got 2 offensive stars that can deadlift when they need them to. There's not a whole lot to be negative about. I think ultimately the contender if part comes from you haven't done it enough, Minnesota. And frankly, anytime Rudy's ever done this well, it's still bit him in the ass in the playoffs. I think Minnesota has the answers for that. At the same time, I don't know that I can just trust it. So that's where they fall into that category. The next category is in need of transaction, roster change, lineup shifts, etc. So these teams are more or less mid, maybe a little above average, maybe a little below average. But ultimately, the most headlining thing you can think about to summarize these teams right now is they need to do something. They need a remix. So you have New York, 14-11, Eastern Conference is 6th seed. We talked about Mitchell Robinson's injury, how much you can do about that. But I think at this point, you're starting to wonder, you love Brunson, you like the core guys, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, how serious are you moving forward? Can those guys be packaged into something that can help New York ascend? Or do you stay walking this path and stay mediocre and hope that the next offseason, or you just keep playing the patient game for a superstar? It's a tough decision, but it's where New York's at. The other teams are not. The other teams are all actually pretty bad. Atlanta's 10-15. Eastern Conference is 10th seed. I think it's pretty fair that they have more players at certain positions than others, and so there's a lot of obvious trade issues or trade reasons there. They are capped a little bit with how much asset-wise they have to spend, so you do look for that to be a little bit of an issue. Though they have a lot of young talent to probably supplement the lack of first rounders. And Toronto will be kind of the same similar category there, where you have 10-15 team, Eastern Conference 11 seed. But at the end of the day, Toronto needs to probably move on from some of their veterans, obtain the assets, and then build a team that has a little bit more of an ecosystem built around Scotty Barnes. Of course, we don't trust the Raptors to do anything normal, so I can't predict this. I'm just saying if they're a normal team, this is how they operate, is the Raptors. So they might just stick with this and then try to be a play-in team again. And if that's what their ownership is okay with, that's what you're going to get. Chicago, they're 10-17. Eastern Conference is 12th seed. We've talked way too much about Chicago this year. Nothing that I haven't already said can be said about this team. They clearly need to make a transaction more than any other roster in basketball. And I would expect them to be the team that makes the change the soonest. And then Memphis, I still have here. Memphis is 6-18. They're the Western Conference's 13th seed, but of course they do get Ja back on Tuesday. And for that reason, and because they have some other flexibility to maybe get into a trade, have Memphis out here, because obviously Ja's going to help. But now maybe because you don't have as much love for your depth, you start saying, okay, well, these pieces can come in together and they can go into something else. And we will see. The too young to call bracket. This is a little unfair, hedging my bet. I feel like this one most likely this tier dissolves into all the other ones by the trade deadline, but will probably consistently stay to start the season. Orlando 16-8, Eastern Conference 4th seed. Indiana 11-13, or 13-11, Eastern Conference 7th seed. Oklahoma City 16-8, Western Conference 2 seed. And the New Orleans Pelicans, 15-11, Western Conference 9th seed. So all these teams exceeding expectations. I think Indiana, we pretty much actually do know who they are. They're kind of a track meet team. They're fun to watch, but I don't expect them to play enough defense to be serious. Orlando feels like they're not that far away from that either. And then New Orleans, I think there is a lot of melding of youth. And this is the first real New Orleans season for these guys. So even though it looks nice, and I think they don't necessarily have all of the same problems, even though they kind of mirror those problems of Indiana and Orlando as well, I think that New Orleans, regardless of how this season goes, we're still going to sort of have a lot more questions moving forward, that we're not going to get the clear answers this year. But the team that I think we will is Oklahoma City. Shea's amazing. Chet's amazing. They have a loaded group around them. They could probably jump out of this tier first, if I'm being honest, and into one of the contenders or contender categories. I think again, it's just this is just new. They just got here. It's easy to win in the first half of the season comparatively, especially when you're a young athletic team. So I do kind of expect and wonder what that'll look like moving forward. The danger zone. This will always exist, even if a team doesn't exist in it. And it's by nature a very volatile zone to be in, so you can come and go very quickly. And realistically, to have been in this, you have to have a realistic title chance or the pressure of the title, because there is nothing dangerous about being the Detroit Pistons right now, for instance. The only team I have here right now is Golden State Warriors, 11-14, Western 11 seed. Draymond Green's suspension is either going to be a blessing or a curse when it comes to the youth movement. I think, if anything, it ushers in the fact that regardless of what Golden State does to finish this season, that it might be a complete retooling around Steph Curry in the offseason, Clay and everybody, which is wild to say. But, I mean, I think that's kind of where we're facing, because I don't know how much, the youth has looked nice. Podziemski and Kuminga, they've really boosted value. I mean, it's not a negative from a Warriors fan. You're getting to see real talent from your draft classes. But at the end of the day, that also kind of comes with saying goodbye to the old guys and minutes allocations and a lot of changing of the guard that's difficult to navigate. And it's like, hey, it's great you have Curry, but you have the pressure now of winning with Curry without all the established everything else. And but shout out to Kerr for at least starting this youth movement sooner than later. Cleveland, Brooklyn, Houston, you guys make up my mid tier. Cleveland, mid is probably the worst situation for you to be in, but it's understandable, especially with the health. And it's not been easy this whole season. So missing these two guys is just another layer to how bad it's been for their injuries. So maybe it's not that bad ultimately, but you're not where you want to be with Mitchell still, his future still being up in the air. Brooklyn, you're exactly where you wanted to be. So good for you, Brooklyn. 13-12, Eastern Conference 9th seed. I think Brooklyn's happy. And then honestly, the same for Houston. Both victims of the James Harden, world tour. Houston's 13-9. They're the Western Conference 7th seed. So maybe me calling them mid is a diss to a Houston fan, but I think this is great. Sengun looks amazing. Your veterans have a real impact, and they don't feel like they're taking too much away from the youth. Which I think is so key, and you really should be impressed with your front office for that. So I don't expect Houston to finish the season out as a playoff team, but I expect them to stay around that, and that's well above what we expected. And then my final tier to wrap us up. Better luck next year / the youth development. When we're a real show, I'll cut in that Happy Gilmore, better luck next year stuff from the beginning. Right now, you just have to get my crappy impression of it. This is a pretty full room right now. The Hornets are 17-17, the Eastern Conference 13th seed. LaMelo's fun to watch, and it's glad that his injury wasn't too bad. But damn, that team sucks. And they kind of had issues keeping people in and out of the lineup. The Jazz are 9-17, Western Conference's 12th seed. You could make an argument that they could make a run for the play-in, but I think let's be honest, they need to. Not necessarily even if it's Laurie, but they need to make the trades. They have too many guys that they don't care about long term. They need to capitalize on some of that. The Blazers are 6-18, Western Conference 14th seed. I think there was some difference in opinion. I know I went back and forth on how much I would like Blazers. I think long story short, DeAndre Ayton's a really frustrating player. And there's probably a lot of teams that are glad they didn't get into that sweepstakes. And the Blazers are probably not one of them because they don't have much to lose with them. But yeah, I think it's fair to say DeAndre Ayton's impact on winning basketball is only so much. And it's unfortunate. And I'm not saying this is the sample size is everything, but I think that his impact so far has not shown us why some people were a little bullish on calling them one of the worst teams easily. But they are. So Spurs are 4-20. They just broke a 17-game losing streak. They are the Western Conference's worst team at the moment. That probably won't change much, though. Messing with the lineups, Malachi Branham, the traditional point guard, being into the lineup. Wemby at the 5, because it's like, what defense are you playing anyway? So you might as well have Wemby at the 5. That's been better. I think it's also been really nice for Jeremy Sohan, who gets to do what he actually supposed to do. So yeah, I'm really excited for the future of the Spurs. Although they look really crappy right now, I don't expect them to stay as crappy as the last two teams I'm going to mention. The Washington Wizards just got a big win over the weekend, but they're still 4-20. They're the second worst team in the Eastern Conference, and that's only by default because good Lord knows we're going to talk about that team next. Wizards are pretty much everything we thought they'd be. Got some fun guys to watch offensively, some frustrating guys to watch offensively, and Bilal Coulibaly looking great. Looking like I was right that the Spurs should have traded back up and got him. But time will tell. At least Washington deserves to have a good player too. We can't keep Washington this barren either. So it's good that he's getting his minutes and starting to make his impact because it was a bit of a slow start to his year. And then finally, we got to talk about it. Probably end the show going on about it more than I want to. But the Pistons are 2-24. That does mean that they're the worst team in the Eastern Conference. You guessed it. I know that was hard to detect, but that is the reality of that. Boy, Monty Williams. I think a lot of us kind of felt this way about Monty due to his track record, but damn, they might have to fire him, and they paid him a lot of money. But that's the thing is even ex-players can fail at the very simple task of unifying groups, and they don't feel like they're unified. I know the talent's one thing, but it feels like they're all fucking miserable. Monty has such a history of making people miserable. Like I can't believe that the Pistons just. I was so excited. There was there was something there. I knew they weren't going to be that good, not a play-in team even, but like, damn, historically bad. I think the losing streak is 26 or something, and they're about to beat that. And I think they will. This is bad. They're getting shelled every night. Like, it's bad. And there's a lot of young talent there, but this is fucking wrong. Either way, thank you guys again. You enjoyed some Hoopla with me. We appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, comment, whatever you can. We appreciate it. Go enjoy life. But when you're done, come back and see us.